Welcome back, everyone, to It's Good to Talk with Clients. Really excited to be joined today by Nick Cole from Float. Many people will be familiar with Float's cash flow forecasting product. Nick will be telling us more about that in due course. Nick, thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. We've just established that it's much snowier here than where you are, so I'm enjoying the sort of Narnia-esque conditions in Scotland.
Brilliant. Well, look, before we dive into the questions and the kind of topics of conversation that we got lined up for today, Nick, if you just give a brief introduction to yourself, and Float, that'd be great.
Sure. So my name's Nick Cole. I am the CCO at Float. I've been with Float just over 2 years. So my background is that prior to joining Float, I had a 20+ year stint in creative agencies and digital agencies, so the agency world basically. That started with me designing websites way back in time. When there weren't really, right at the start of when commercial websites were starting to be a thing. I quickly realized that I was pretty average at designing things, but better at communicating things. So actually better at translating and talking to clients and explaining things to clients. So I moved over into a business development, account management role. And then that led to me, I guess, becoming client services director in a big agency, heading up the biz dev side of things in agencies. And so for a majority of my career has been around communication in one shape or form. It's either been selling and communication or managing clients and making sure that clients were happy with what we were providing them. So that was really my background before moving over to Float. And a lot of those skills, and which we'll talk about, like a lot of that is definitely relevant at Float.
Fantastic. Well, so a deep experience of communicating effectively with clients, prior to your work at Float and working with accountants, and this series is all about accountants and how they can most effectively communicate with their clients. But I'd love to delve into your experience, Nick, and you talk about your kind of 20 years of agency experience. What did you learn about how best to manage relationships back in those days? What were the main challenges? How did you build trust? How did you build rapport with your clients? What were your top tips and learnings from those 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot. I'm obviously getting on a bit, David. So it was sort of smoke signals, back in the day, and there's technology's definitely helped with that. But it's taught me that you also shouldn't and couldn't just rely on technology. I think there's definitely a human centricity piece there that is really crucial. Like whether you're using technology to leverage that or whether it's still some in person. I guess the last period of time has made us question what in person means. I think in terms of from an experience point of view, there's Float works and operates in two distinct but interconnected customer channels. So we market Float directly to small businesses, which doesn't involve a huge amount of relationship management from my point of view and from a team point of view, but we do provide online, in-person help and support for customers across our markets, which is really, really important. And we pride ourselves on that communication, making sure that customers can ask questions and get feedback when they need it. So the other side of things is the accounting and bookkeeping firms, and that is much more like my agency background. So when it comes to building trust and rapport, I think the key things are, and this definitely resonates with our relationship with accountants, but over the years with agency, is people need to believe you. So you need to be real. People need to understand and trust that you're knowledgeable, that you're honest. And I think really crucially that you're genuinely looking out for them and their interests, not just trying to sell them stuff. And I think this is the key. I think, within Float as well, we very much pride ourselves on providing our customers and our partners with what they need. We'll never sell something that we don't feel is going to be beneficial to them. So that, I think, is a pillar of trust. And then once you've built that, then it's around really understanding the problem. So really getting yourself into that customer world, trying to see things from their point of view, trying to understand their desired outcomes. Potentially then that veers into that translation piece that I talked about before. So not assuming that everyone knows everything and gets it. Education and translation, I think, is really, really important. And that is helping, customers and accountants, well, whoever your customer really is, to clearly understand their challenges, the benefits, and then how your product or your service fits with that and can provide value and benefit. So, and then it's about that proactive reinforcement, regular communication, making sure you do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Being proactive is another thing that certainly not all accountants and bookkeepers are brilliant at. And I know that they're really busy, and the last period of time's accentuated that. But that proactivity piece is I think, really important. So they would be my really top tips from the agency world that I see a lot of parallel in with what we do with our work with accountants and bookkeepers.
Amazing. Well, Nick, thanks so much. There's some invaluable stuff there. I love the, it's not just tech. Tech is a great, kind of catalyst, but it's the human centricity and just like, real sort of foundational sort of truth there. The believe in you, got to be real, knowledgeable, honest, genuinely looking out for them, regular communications, do what you say you will do. I'll cover the next two kind of talking points in one if I can. So we've already covered a bit about accountants and they're talking with clients and keen to, effectively there's three parts to this. Where have accountants been when it comes to talking to their end clients? Do they enjoy it? Where do they struggle with it? What impact has the pandemic had on that? And then where does it need to go compared to where it is today? So it's sort of the past, the pandemic kind of induced present, if you will, and then the future.
Yeah. So I think in terms of I think our picture is probably skewed insofar as generally, like a lot of the apps and flows different tend to work with the more, what are often called the more trailblazer accountants.
Yeah.
So many of whom have embraced technology. They understand that advisory is going to play an increasingly crucial role in the success of practices in accountancy in general. So I think it's really easy to look at those people and think, well, this is everyone, but it isn't. So, a lot of these trailblazer accountants are really doing a lot of things right. They are consciously speaking with their clients more than an average client might. They are probably more in a comfort zone when it comes to having those conversations. But I think generally, I mean, my partner is an accountant. We were just chatting about it. So my partner's an accountant. She's just set up her own bookkeeping firm. I know that one-to-one communication is not her natural domain. It's not. She's been trained to be an accountant, and that's what she likes. And so I think it's really easy for lots of firms that are like, right, we're now advisory and we're going to talk to our customers more. So off you go. I think that's quite difficult, because there's an assumption that an accountant can do that really easily. And a lot of accountants have been focused on compliance work. That is their comfort zone. So expecting them to be instantaneously amazing at sales or great account managers or natural communicators, it's hard, and I think that's quite assumptive. So I think that's I think there's a broad spectrum. I think the pandemic has helped actually, probably from that point of view, because I think it's opened up maybe other channels to accountants. And that's maybe eased accountants into that communication via this sort of medium. And I think that it's helped sort of raise the advantages of doing so. I also think that there's in our experience, there's been a lot more inbound questions and queries from clients to prompt to that communication. So maybe sometimes clients aren't asking those questions and there's silence coming in and therefore there's silence going out. So I think that that's really helped. And certainly in our experience, the best accountants have been ones that have been both proactive with their outreach and ongoing communication, and then making sure that they're providing comfort and structure around those regular communications and reviews. So I think that's helped, and you would hope that moving forward, future-wise, that a lot of what practices have established during the pandemic, that they would have seen advantages to that, and that they're going to have learned quite a lot of lessons in terms of continuing with those communications. It's like there's a lot of chat about going back to normal. Well, like what is that? And you shouldn't just go back to worse ways of doing things, actually. So I think there's a lot of efficiency come from the pandemic. I think that it can drive a lot of more efficient comms, where a lot of the big firms might have wanted to do everything in person and have done everything in person. You can actually have a check-in that doesn't involve a set piece meeting, and actually that's all a client wants and needs, and you can potentially do that more frequently. So I think there's quite a lot of learnings there, and we've got some great examples of accountants that I think do it right. I mean, we work with accountants all over the world. There's an accountant in Northern Ireland called Sharon Brown from a firm called Magic Beans, who I think does things brilliantly well. She has regular, and pre-pandemic, had regular meetings with our clients in the diary. She is a Float user, so she used Float and she uses it sort of for those future-facing conversations that I think not many accountants historically have had, but that actually that's what business owners want more. So, and I think that's just a matter of being intentional about it and organised with it, and then thinking proactively from a customer perspective. Is this going to help my customer? Is this what they're going to want? Rather than getting a phone call twice a year, if you're lucky, which I think is maybe what's probably the old accountancy world has been like.
That's really interesting. So I've never sort of thought about it like that, but there's the self-selecting sample of, pre-pandemic, it was really the trailblazers. You cite Sharon and Magic Beans there, but they're very much the exception in terms of their communication with clients, and it feels like, based on what you say, the pandemic has brought to the fore that everyone needs this, because there's been a reactive demand placed on accountants, and what that is exposing. You talk about going back to normal, and there being a new normal, actually, of people seeing, well, no, this is now the expectation that I'm going to have of my clients and of my accountant, as a client. And really interesting point there about the skills gap that I guess it highlights. And yes, okay, I go to school for all of the technical side of the training, but where does the communication skills, the account management training, the relationship building training come from? And that being a gap that now, because of that new normal, is more pressing and its need to be filled.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, David. I hadn't really thought about that, but I think it's potentially accelerated the need for that. So firms understanding that actually communication can be done differently, it can be done better. Embracing technology to facilitate that is great, but it does then potentially, as you've just said, accelerate the need for firms to maybe train, or to not assume that everyone's comfortable with that as part of their role.
Really interesting. And so if we can move on from that to Float, and we've already covered in a bit of detail about how accountants are using Float, but Yeah. So is there anything, you do to help them communicate better with their clients when it comes to cash flow? Any mistakes they often make? Any top tips that you as a team and company provide to your accountants you partner with?
We've learned a lot. I think we've learned a lot during the last year as well. We've definitely learned that accountants, like and appreciate some structure. I think having agendas, making sure that meetings are running on time, helping them with documentation and training and a plan and, implementation plans and profiles, and don't assume. Again, it probably comes back to that, is that, right, well, they're an accountant, so therefore they get all this stuff. So we don't need to explain cash flow or the benefit of it or the value of it or how to do it or provide, all of it. Actually, that's not true. I think accountants are really busy. They've probably never been so busy. And generally, and I'm obviously, I'm generalizing here, so apologies, but, they tend to appreciate structure. Time is money. And so being organized with that and helping them to, see value. And I think the value piece is really important because it comes from 2 points of view. They have to understand that there's value and where the value is for their clients, and there's an education piece here. And that may certainly in the case of flow and cash flow it's not inherent. It's not something that accountants really have historically done. So we're not necessarily talking about, well, it's just a better way to do what you're already doing. There is a sort of, actually, this is why your clients need this, and it might not be even a comfort zone for you, and it might not be something that you've done before. So I think having things to help them through that is important. Many accountants are also then obsessed with the reporting. I think reporting is generally, from an accountant perspective, is here's what has happened. So historic is often where accountants would go. So presenting a set of management accountants or having a meeting with your customers about, well, here's what happened last month. Actually, from my personal point of view of running a small business, which I have, and then speaking to lots of small business owners and accountants, small business owners want to know what's going to happen. There's limited value of what has happened. They ideally want to know what's going to happen. And so reporting tends to focus on that, whereas actually what they want is that. So I'm going to just share a screen a minute. I'll share a couple of things. So just to sort of illustrate that point, we've created a few documents. So we've created something called an ideal client profile, which gives sort of challenges, pain points, types of business, not just assuming that this is going to work for everyone and it's going to work immediately for all your clients. So, hey ho, let's go. I think this helps accountants, and we've found that this has been massively appreciated. Is actually, well, here's the characteristics. Here's who you should be thinking about, the type of business, where they're at, what their challenges, their pain points. We've also then created things around guides to build in a cash flow support proposal. So, and this is not just our opinion. This has been based on talking to lots of accountants, lots of bookkeepers, lots of small businesses, which we work with all over the world. So understanding actually what a business owner, which is ultimately accountants' clients, want and need. So you can see there's a bunch of things here. And then in terms of the app itself, I'd mentioned that sort of historic versus future view. Float is classified as a reporting app in the Xero Marketplace, for instance. And while you can get reporting from Float, and we have good reporting, I would never have classified it, and I never would classify it as a reporting application. What it is an operational tool that can facilitate communication. So going back to Sharon Brown, she uses Float to facilitate conversation. So she uses Float with her clients. So it's like, well, here's where you're at. You can see here on our overview screen, you've got a bunch of things that need to be reconciled. You've got a bunch of invoices that are past their date. So there's some actions here. This is where your cash flow is at. Here's your balance. You can go into your cash flow screen. You can see scenarios. So, you know, this is what this is showing you is, right, here's my base budget versus my scenario. You can go into daily breakdowns and set, you know, specific periods of time. So if you just want to see the next week or the next month in terms of what's coming in, what's going out, where you are versus budget, you can do that. It's all very visual. It's all future focused. You can see what's happened and what today is, but it's really sort of future focused. You can see your invoices, your bills, as I said, on that overview screen. So you can play around with which invoices are due, which bills you need to pay. If you're having conversations around, well, actually this one's going to be paid in a fortnight, you can see that. And then actually you can go into insights and things like scenario comparisons, which we've seen. I mean, the scenario side of things, the what ifs is always how I used to think about things. I don't know a business owner who doesn't think what if about 50 times a day. And I think that has been accentuated by what's happened with the pandemic and what's happened with Brexit. So Float enables you to model all of these what ifs and compare and contrast actually, well, here's what if I do this, or can I do this, or should I do this, and can I afford it? So I think, you know, that's the real beauty of Float is that is the quickest whistle stop tour I've ever done of Float, by the way, David. But I think that for me is the premise. It's like it's action orientated. It's breeding good habits for accountants and for their clients, and it's really, really facilitating communication. And I know that that's what Connect for are all about, is facilitating that, you know, strong, regular, structured communication. And, you know, I think Float has a similar ethos to that, actually.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Nick. I love the facilitating communication. And, you know, it's not a reporting tool. Yes, you know, it would be an operational tool, but on the part of an accountant, it's facilitating awareness and the communication and the forward-looking kind of conversation and decision making off the back of that. I also love the don't assume. I think so much of effective communication hangs off that in terms of working with accountant, you know, working with anyone, right? But in your work with accountants, don't assume.
Well,
don't assume that, you know, they have a deep knowledge of this area, or that they have the time, right? You know, may have gone to school for it however many years ago, but you've got 101 other things to juggle, and the ability to just shortcut that refresh rather than having to go back and work it out for yourself can be so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I generally don't think that many good things comes from assumption. Well, you can go there when you're busy or when you're under pressure. You know, I think it's easy to assume that your client knows this, or that you're an accountant, so therefore they're bound to know this, or they're bound to value this, or appreciate. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So dial it back. You know, people who do know are not going to, you know, they're not going to take offense to it being spelled out a little bit for them. So sort of, you know, go down. This was always a thing from an agency point of view, is you always sort of communicate down, I think, to the lowest common denominator. Sure. So don't be assuming that someone gets this. Like, it's like, explain.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely taking that away from this conversation. Just thinking about it in the context of, well, you know, what benefits do you get from assuming versus, you know, not assuming? You know, what's the downside from not assuming? And very little. Whereas, you know, the potential downside from assuming is huge. So look, that's been fascinating. Yeah. So just finally, Nick, you know, thank you very much for sparing your time today. It's been hugely insightful for me personally, and I'm sure will be hugely insightful for everyone watching this. How can people find out more about you and Float?
So you can visit our website. It's really comprehensive. We've got a supported partner program that we run at Float. You can go to floatapp.com/partners. and that'll tell you all about Float. It'll tell you all about the benefits for you, for your practice. If you want to ask me any questions personally, then you can email me anytime, nick@floatapp.com. I'm happy to answer questions, point you at people that know more than me is probably what I'll end up doing. But yeah, so please reach out if you've got any questions, or if you want to continue this conversation. I'd welcome to hear everyone's thoughts.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for that, Nick. It's been great speaking. Really appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure, David. Thanks. See you.
Hopefully you enjoyed that short interview. My name is Andrew Jordan. I am the CEO at Connect4. Please do book a demo. Click on book a demo and we will love to talk you through our platform and to show it in action. And yeah, great to have you with us.